Welcome to the Writer Groupie Podcast. I'm Kim Smith, the writing guru, bringing you discussions, insights, and insider details on planning, producing, promoting, and profiting as a writer. This is a podcast by writers for writers. You can find out more about Writer Groupie at www.writergroupie.net. And here's the next episode of Writer Groupie. Okay, and here we are with episode 47 of Writer Groupie Podcast. And tonight, my guest is Armand Rosamilia. Am I saying that right?
Close enough, yeah.
I'm terrible about butchering people's names, so if you need to correct me, please do. Armand is a Jersey guy living in Florida. He's written over 150 stories, including horror, zombies, thrillers, and more. And as far as I could tell from Amazon, it dates back to 2006. So he's been at this for a long time. He runs 2 podcasts on Project iRadio, Armcast, Dead Sexy Horror Podcast, and Arm in Tooth's Dead Time Podcast. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about podcasting as we go. So welcome, Armand. How you doing today?
Good to see you again. We run
indeed.
into each other at some conventions.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the fall. in the spring. I'm going to be at Mid-South Con again as usual. Hope you'll be able to make it.
I will not be there.
Oh, well, dang.
Yeah, I'm only doing the TNAE in Atlanta in April, and then I'm doing Scares That Care in July, and that'll be it for me for 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've really cut down. For me, it's at Mid-South in Imaginarium are great conventions, but you're talking it's like a 12-hour ride one way.
Yeah, you are a piece away from both of those. I can understand. Yeah. I certainly can.
So we really decided next year more devoted to writing and less to all the travel.
Well, listen, you have got an awful lot of work out there already. I just scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. Amazon's just full of you. So I want to know more about that. How'd you get started with writing?
Well, I've always, the old cliche, I've always been a writer. But it's true. When I was 12, my mother still is a huge horror book fan. And she would read 5 or 6 books. Stephen King was a huge... and still is for her. Every Stephen King book she has to read. Well, I started reading her Dean Koontz books when I was 12. And I got hooked, and I could not get enough. So my mother always tells a story of she would read a new paperback, and she would let me read it after she was done. And I would start going through, and there's one that I always talk about. It was about giant spiders or something killing people. And this teenage boy and girl go into a theater, and then the next 2 pages are blacked out. My mother had crossed it all out with a marker, and then the teenagers leave. So I'm guessing they did something in the theater. So she would kind of edit, what a 12-year-old can actually read. Yeah. And I was hooked from there, and I've always, growing up, I've always wanted to be an author. And I always say it took me until I was, about 40 to become a full-time author. But I had published late 80s. My first story was published in 1988 when I was still in high school. Short story in a little side-stapled, Xeroxed little zine. And all through the 90s on and off. But nothing really serious until about 6 years ago when I just really started to, take this more seriously. I mean, I had, you see, I've been published for a long time, but it was sporadic. The last couple of years now, 2013 and 2014, I had an average about 45 releases a year. So
that's just amazing to me. I'm having a hard time struggling to get 2 or 3 books out a year, and you're killing it.
A lot of it's short stories. A lot of it was novella length, but I try to do my 2,000 words a day. I had a lot of a ton of trunked ideas and short stories and things that I had been playing with for the last 20 years or so. So it was great. I got in right when the ebooks took off. I mean, I got in at the perfect moment, and I just said, you know what? There was that good 3-4 months in the beginning where you could basically put anything on Amazon and it was just you were selling a billion copies. It was great. So I put a ton of short stories out, and I tried everything. And like I always say, I made every mistake possible in order to get where I am now and to really get the stories. Now I'm going for the longer stuff. I'm doing more of the novels. I'm kind of getting away from the horror. My last 2 books have been thrillers. Um, I won a Kindle Scout last month, and that's a crime thriller.
Congratulations to you.
That was a horrible 30 days of every single, you look at if you're on the hot list or you're not. Amazon doesn't purposely tell you anything, and you get all the way to the end, and then you got to wait 3-4 days, and it happened to be right after my birthday weekend, so I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it because 99% of the books aren't. And then I got that email that I made it, and I was like ecstatic.
I'm so happy for you. Nobody deserves it more because you've been at this for so long and you've worked so hard. Now, my question is, and this is kind of off of our list, because I have this problem myself, is I will have an idea for a story and I'll write down a quick sketch of it and I'll start writing and I get along about 3 or 4 chapters and then I get another idea. What do you do to keep yourself on track when you have these ideas coming at you like, trains on a railroad car?
Well, my thing is, like right now I'm looking over at my other computer. I have 2 computers, and one of them is no internet connection. That's my writing computer. And right now I think I have 7 different stories pulled up on it.
Wow.
So I am writing, my goal is 2,000 words a day, but it might be 500 on this one, 1,000 on this one. And I don't outline. I'm a total pantser, so it's really just what is the idea. Now that used to be nice and easy. Right now I have like the next 14 months mapped out because of contracts, because of different books that I'm basically being commissioned to write and whatnot. So it's a little tougher. There's days where I don't want to write any of these, and I go, I just want to write a brand new idea that came into my head, and then it's very hard to be able to justify that because it's a business and because it's making the money. I'll write that idea down, or I just keep it in the back of my mind. And years ago, I used to carry the little notebook around, and I used to write everything in it, every little idea I got, and then I realized that a lot of those ideas, I'll never be able to write all of them, and a lot of those ideas weren't really that great. So I tried to write too much of it down, and I figure if it's a great idea, it will stay with me, and those pretty much have been the books that, those are pretty much the ideas that have stuck with me. Like I said, the last 2 novels that I just put out are based on ideas that have been in my head since high school or just after high school. So they've been floating around for about 20-25 years.
I don't know. I guess I'm quite a lot older than you, haha. But it seems like the older I get, the less I can keep stuff in my head. I had a great idea for a story today based on something that I heard on television. And so I need to write that down. I definitely do, because it's a great story idea, but if I don't do something with it soon, I'm not going to remember it.
Yeah, I can only imagine the amount of ideas I've forgotten or lost in my head, because I am, when we're the same, we're very creative, but then there's none of that, the rest of it, the management part of it. I have 2 dry erase boards now, and I have things written down, and here's my schedules, and my wife made me a spreadsheet so I know here's my next 14 months, here's what needs to be written and how many words, and I struggle with that. Lately we've been doing where the money coming in, okay, I want to keep track of it, and she had to help me put a sheet together. So I would have no idea. I don't know if I made $100 this year or $10 billion. I have no idea, because the way royalties come in, and you get nickel and dime, and Kobo sends you $4, and Amazon sends you a couple hundred or whatever, and so it's I just want to be creative. I just want to do the creative part of it, but then the rest of it kind of has to come into place as well.
Well, I'm telling you, I want to do a production schedule for 2016 for myself. I'm really moving into a position where I want to develop this into a business. I'm coming out with my mystery series in 2016. I have 3 books written, and I have the 4th one maybe a quarter of the way written. And my editor has finished the first one, and we've already begun on the second one for edits. And you know, I really want to do it right. I've done I've got a pretty good backlist of stuff, but it's varied. It's fantasy, it's romance, it's you know, it's non-fiction. It's all over the map, and I really like writing mystery, especially what I'm doing, which is kind of a caper/cozy type of mystery series. So I want to get my mystery series off the ground. And you know, you sound like you've really got your business going together, production schedules and stuff. Tell me how that's working for you. Give me some advice on how I can do this business thing.
You really have to get into the mindset. And again, for 25, 30 years, I've been writing the stuff I wanted to write. I've been writing for fun and not worrying about the genre, not worrying about how to sell it, not worrying about any of that stuff. And then it gets to that point where you stop giving your stuff away, where you start making money, you start looking for publishers. We all chase in the beginning, and every publisher that says, I love your stuff, I can't give you anything, but it's exposure. You jump on it anyway, or you go, oh, it's a 10-year contract, okay. So you really have to get into the mindset of that you can't just take everything. Just in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I've knocked down like 3 or 4 anthologies that have wanted stories that I've wanted to be in because of some of the other authors that are also in the table of contents, but I just don't have the time, and I can't justify because it's not a paying gig. As far as I can't worry about the royalties. I can't say, okay, well, you're gonna 11, 12 people in this, we're all gonna get a royalty split. Yeah, when I know I have a contract and here's an advance, or it's a market that I know the publisher is really gonna push this book. So
right. And do you do a lot of self-publishing stuff now, or are you still with more publishers than you're doing your own? Are you hybrid? How are you doing that?
I do both. I do a lot of, I'm at my Dying Days, which is my zombie series, my main series. I still self-publish that. So I do the zombie series and a couple of other books I'll self-publish. And I had a publisher that came to me about a year or so ago and wanted to buy it and re-release them and everything else. But the money just wasn't there because that's paying the bills for me. That series alone is paying the bills. But it allows me to write in other things that I want to do as well, and then do publisher. Like I'm working with Devil Dog Press. They just re-released my Chelsea Avenue, which is I call it like a supernatural thriller. And then actually this week they put out Green River Blend, which is also like a supernatural thriller. And they're both a start of 2 separate trilogies. Not horror, really. I would call both of them kind of like Bentley Little supernatural, things, which is, another great author that I grew up reading all of his stuff. So, I try to do all that. Again, Kindle Scout is another avenue for me. People say, well, would you ever go traditional? Yeah, if the contract was good, if the idea was good, if the promotion was good. I've talked to a couple of different agents over the years, so I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. As much as I love Amazon right now, and they're making me money and they're allowing me to do this for a living, they could turn around tomorrow and say, you know what, ebooks aren't making us any money and we're going to go back to something else. And then you really have limited yourself. And I try to tell other authors to try to do all of it. Try to work with, really good. There's not a ton of great small presses out there, but there are some that are really good, that are worth working with.
I've done small press before, but all the ones that I worked with went out of business. And so I went totally indie. And everything I'm doing now, I'm doing on my own. But I keep getting these nudges to seek out a publisher. But my main thing is, for the benefit of having the help with cover art, with editing, with promotion. It's a lot for one person to do on their own. You need that help that a publishing company offers, but you have to be savvy in the industry today before you sign with any kind of just anybody type of small publisher.
Oh yeah.
So
I see authors, which is funny to me, that say, "Oh, I signed with so and so," and the first thing I do is I look and I say, "Wow, their covers are horrible," to myself, And then when their book comes out, 99% of the time they say, "I can't believe this. They gave me this horrible cover."
Oh.
And I say, "Well, but look at what they're doing. They don't have professional covers, or, and it's a little bit of research, and it's asking. When I signed with Ragnarok last year, I was taking a chance because they weren't a horror publisher or a supernatural publisher. They were a fantasy publisher. But I liked the guys who ran it. I loved what they were doing. So we took a chance, and it didn't work, and we walked away, and I got my book re-released with Devil Dog Press, who is a horror publisher, and she understands it better. But there's no hard feelings. I love the cover I had before. I love the editing. I love the whole thing. So it's a company that, in my mind, if I wrote something fantasy, I would go to them first.
Yeah.
And then there's a small group. I mean, there's a very small group of publishers that I would take a chance with, that I would work with. And it's not necessarily about a big advance or any of that. It's about putting a book out that I know they're going to market and they understand the book. And for me, it's reaching a new audience. I mean, with my zombie stuff, I hit that ceiling. I know I can put out Dying Day 6 in June, and I know I'm going to get X number of sales in that first month. And I'm happy with that number, but I also want to reach, a potentially new audience. That was what Kindle Scout for me was for.
Right. If you don't mind me asking, which book did they pick up?
It's a crime thriller called Dirty Deeds. It's a first person. It's basically the premise. It's a guy who basically gets rid of, say you're a senator, or say you're a rock star, say you're a stripper, whoever, and you have a child in your life that you want to get rid of. You want to basically have that kid eliminated and killed. You contact this guy, except he doesn't actually kill the child. He puts the child somewhere else. He saves the kid and puts them through his own foster care system.
Wow.
So that's
great premise.
Yeah, that's pretty much, that was the idea, and that idea just came to me like out of nowhere about 6 months ago, and it was one of the ones that stayed in my head. And then when I heard Kindle Scout, I said, "Oh, I have like 5 horror books sitting here." Well, they don't take horror. And I said, "Well, crime thriller, I want to do that." So that's when I wrote it. And I mean, I wrote the first draft in probably about 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
It was just so easy to do, and everybody, all the beta readers, everyone who read it, are people who read more of those, thrillers and stuff, and they loved it. And I'm actually about halfway through the second one. I'm doing the
awesome.
Yeah. So my goal would be to have Kindle Scout put this one out in, say, January, February, and then every 6 months I'll put out another one and see how long I can go with it.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you, and I hope you'll stay in touch with me and keep me in the loop on how that goes for you, because that's just a tremendous honor. And, if you want to come back on and promote some more, you're certainly welcome to do that. But listen, I wanted to talk to you about a few other things. First of all, I'm a huge blogger. Now I'm doing 2 blogs. I'm doing a blog on my site, Kim Smith Author, and I'm doing a blog on the Writer Groupie site. The podcasting is a part of the Writer Groupie blogging process, as well as articles and other things. But to me, blogging, was a lot more popular years ago than it may be today. Today, it's kind of, maybe it is and maybe it isn't popular. But you've been blogging for a long time as well. I noticed on your blog, your earliest blog that I saw listed was in 2011. That's a pretty good long lifespan for a blog. And I wanted to know how you got started blogging and what you think about blogging today.
Well, I actually got started around 2009 was the original blog. And that was on like LiveJournal or one of those. And it was it was horribly buy my book, and that's pretty much all it was for about a year or so, and I didn't get anybody to even look at it. But then again, I learned from my mistakes, and once I got the current blog on through WordPress, and I really noticed that when I did I would go on other people's things and I would do guest posts for them, and I would get a lot of people who would then jump over to my blog. So I realized, okay, that's a good way to do it. And then I turned it around and I said, if I get other people to guest post on mine, will I potentially get their readers? And that's exactly what's happened. So it's evolved where I still have posts about my books coming out. I still do different things. I'll do my year end and everything I've put out and all those. But it's 90% of it now is guest blogs. And it's not just
that.
It's not just horror. I mean, you can do a romance, you can do erotica, you can do thrillers, whatever you put out. If you ask me, hey, I want to do this, a guest post, send me everything, I put it up. And that gives me more readers, and it helps you. I'm very big on helping other authors. I was helped in the beginning. A lot of great people helped me. Jay Conrath with his blog.
Yes.
Scott Nicholson really took the time, and this was a guy that was traditionally published and had just jumped back into doing the self-publishing and all this. So I learned a lot from some really great people, and so I want to give that back. I want to, I'm in the HWA. I'm part of the mentoring program, and I think it's the karma of it. I mean, it's the and you always learn from people too, which is great. I mean,
it is. It totally is. And that's encouraging for me to hear you say that you really still keep your blog live and you're doing a lot with it, because, that's almost a universal question now, is the blog still viable? And I hope that it is, because I blog nearly every day on one of my blogs. So, something that I was going to ask you also is about your podcast. You don't just blog and you don't just write, you do podcasting as well. You're like me, you're never still, apparently. So
no.
We want to know about your podcasting side.
We try everything. That's, I think, is the most important thing.
Yes.
I do a podcast called Armcast, Dead Sexy Horror Podcast. It's been since last July. I've been doing it, so I think I'm on episode about 80 right now.
Wow.
And every week, every Friday, a new episode comes out with two about half-an-hour interviews with two different authors. And not always horror authors. I've had thriller authors. I've had other people. And for me, it's authors that I want to talk to. It's not, I've had my friends on. I've had guys that I'm familiar with, Jack Wallen, Jay Wilburn, Joe McKinney, Mark Tufo, those guys. But I also like to find brand new authors like that. I just pick up and read. There's a woman, Dawn McKenna, who writes thrillers set in Florida. I had never heard of her, and I just happened to see her on Kindle Unlimited, and I read all 4 of her books in two nights.
Wow,
and
that's
so
great.
I said I have to find out about her. So I contacted her. Do you want to be in my podcast? And she came on. And that to me, that's the fun of meeting people. And so for that, it's just me. It's been going on for a long time, and I have a lot of fun. I love meeting new authors, like I said. And about halfway through, I got picked up by Project iRadio. I was doing it myself, and then Project iRadio has Brian Keene's show, has Three Guys with Beards with Jonathan Maybury and Christopher Golden and James Moore, and they have Kelly Owens has a show on there. So there was a lot of name recognition, and what was great about it is they said, yeah, we want your show, but we also, can you do another show? Do you want to do another show? And I said, yeah, sure. I have all this free time, sure. And I thought of who can I do it with? And Mark Tufo, another horror author who's done phenomenal in his career. He's been doing this full-time as long as I have. And he was scared like you would not believe. He did not want to do it. And I was just like, have a couple of beers, relax, and we'll do it. And that one's a little different. We do usually one guest for an hour, but most of it has been with people in the movies and things like that. I write book adaptations for Hollywood movies for a very small company that does mostly like zombie films and things like that. And Mark, his series is basically being he has an option for it now with a Hollywood producer. So
Wow, that's great.
yeah, so we kind of pulled that, and this week we had Mikhail Vega on, who's been in two of the Transformers movies and the last GI Joe movie, and he's also been in a bunch of the movies that I've written the books for, which is fun too. So we try to have different people, like fun people, and that we want to learn more. And let's face it, people that we want to be connected to help our careers somewhere in the future.
Sure.
So
Gosh,
that's
how do you get them to come on your show? I mean, if they're sounds like they're semi-celebrity or maybe even full-on celebrity. I mean, how do you approach them? Do you have to go through publicists and stuff?
No, usually most of them I go right to them. A great example on Twitter about a month ago, because my Twitter account is huge. I think I'm at 111,000 people.
I'm one of them.
You're one of them, yes. And a guy had posted he had a book, and he was a costume designer for many years in Hollywood. He did Battlestar Galactica, Quantum Leap, that movie with Christopher Reeves, Somewhere in Time.
Right.
And he was just posting, "Hey, I got a book out." So I just sent him a tweet, and I just said, "Hey, would you like to be on my podcast?" and sent him the link. And we had him on a couple weeks ago, and he told us these fantastic stories of old Hollywood,
Wow.
and it was great, and it's really just, Santiago Cirillo was one of our favorite guests. He was Julio on season, I think, 4 of The Walking Dead.
See, I haven't even started watching that show yet, and everybody talks about it. I feel like such an outcast.
You should probably watch it.
And, I gotta watch it.
And you know why I got him on? Because I saw him at Mid-South Convention the first year I went. He was just one of the guests, and basically I sent him an email and said, "Hey, I saw you here. Would you like to be on the podcast?" And he was phenomenal. And that's really, for me, it's just, and then there's a ton of people that can't do it. Their schedules don't always match up on the days that we're recording and everything. But
Right.
I find that most people, it's just a matter of asking. And I'm very quiet in person until I know you. But online, I'm just like a bull in a china closet, and I'm just going to, because I always say to myself, this is part of the career. It's not just the sitting down and writing. That would be great, but it's also the brand. It's also getting me out. And the two podcasts do that. Me and Mark, it's Armand 2's Dead Time podcast. And we just get out there as much as we can. And that's really it. And I like to give back. We do, last year I did Scares That Care in Virginia, which is a charity convention, and basically they raise $30,000, and they give 3 different families $10,000 each.
Oh my gosh, how fabulous!
Yeah, and Brian Keene does all the author part of it. He gets all the authors in, he does all the panels and the signings and all that. And I got involved last year and loved it. The best convention I've ever been to.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
So Joe Ripple, who runs it, was on our podcast. I said, "Joe, come on and talk about it." Well, halfway through, Mark Tufo had a couple of drinks and decides, "Hey, if we can raise, $1,000, we'll wear kilts and we'll record the podcast."
Oh,
So
I
it ended
remember
up
you telling me about that at Imaginarium in the fall.
Right.
You were telling me about that.
Well, we ended up raising over $25,000.
Far out.
And me, Mark, Joe Ripple, and Brian Keene, all 4 of us are going to wear kilts at the convention, and we're going to record our podcast in front of a live audience.
Oh my God, that is too fun.
And it's just that's the fun stuff, I do the authors supporting our troops, where I collect author signed books for soldiers in remote areas, and this will be my 3rd year coming up now. And
I completely forgot about that. I really did want to contribute to that. You need to keep reminding me so I can do that next year.
Well, actually, I'm telling everybody now because of the holiday. The books are slowing down, and the mail, and so I just said in January it'll kick up again. We broke 3,500 books, which was the goal. 3,000 the year before, and
that's awesome.
So I guess this year will be 4,000 if we can get to there, and it's awesome. And it's just again, it's the karma for me. It's the helping other people, and I think that's really neat about it.
That is fantastic. I'm telling you. I want to ask you, we're getting down to the last few minutes of the show. I wanted to ask you your ultimate goal as an author/podcaster. What would you like to see happen in your career in the next 2 or 3, 5 years?
I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. I want to be able to, keep putting out the books that the fans seem to like. I have a great time doing the podcast. I don't want that to ever get to where it feels like a job. Before this, I was on FM radio for about 1.5 years, and it got to the point where the travel was too much, and it got to be where it was like a job, and I would rather do something else. And I don't ever want to get to that. I have good and bad days with writing. I mean, I went through 4 or 5 days now where I haven't written anything. I've been just doing other stuff, and this is a tough time of year. But I enjoy it. I sat down and wrote over 2,000 words today, and I just sat down and just got back in, and I just enjoy it, and I want to continue to do that. And then obviously the most important thing would be within 5 years is I want to be so super filthy rich that I don't have to talk to any of you people anymore. I can just live in my mansion and have people chauffeur me and stuff like that. So that's that's the real goal.
Okay, so you're going to totally forget us little people when you get there, right?
Right. You'll know I got there because I'll do Kim who? Who are you?
I totally do not blame you, and I would probably say the same.
If we're being honest, yeah.
It has been so much fun having you come on my show tonight. You've just given me a lot of things. I could sit here and ask you 1,000,000 questions, and we could go all night. But
you know where I am. You can always ask away. I love to talk about writing and the business of it and everything. Because I love to interact with other people.
And that's important too, because we do have to keep an eye on the business aspect of it, but we still do want to do the stuff that's fun, that makes writing really fun for us, because it's a creative endeavor, and it has to be fun, or we're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So this was fun, and I really enjoyed having you on my show, and I do want for you to come back. I'd love to have you come back on, Maybe we could talk about production schedules, because that's something I've got facing me in the future. I've got to figure out how you do one of those.
Right. Well, definitely. And I would also like you in 2016. I'd like you on Armcast too. Come on.
Oh, I'd love to. I would come in a heartbeat. You just tell me when and where, and I'll be there.
We'll have to set that up.
Sounds good. Well, all right. Well, I'm going to close it down. Episode 47's in the bag. Armand, thank you so much again for being my guest.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Writer Groupie. For booking information, show notes, and more, visit writergroupie.net.